I never thought something like this could happen to me. Don't repeat my mistakes. The snow had just begun to fall quietly and softly when I pulled the heavy curtains closed in the living room. The house had become quieter this year, although the holidays had always been quiet since my divorce. I had lived in this old two-story house for almost 20 years. White siding, a blue shutter, creaky floorboards that had their own opinion about where you walked in such a house, where memories, like dust in the corners, are stored. This year was different. My son Daniel had come home for the first time in almost 4 years. He lived in Portland, was busy with work, relationships that eventually fizzled out, and, as he put it, trying to figure himself out. I tried not to take it to heart when the visit stopped. I told myself that this is what adult children do. They grow up, leave, and come back different. If they come back at all. The last time I saw him, he was 24. He was thin, still a little unsure of himself, with that same wary smile, as if he was afraid of disappointing me. Now, when he finally crossed the threshold that Friday evening, he was almost 28. I barely recognized the man standing on my doormat. He seemed taller, broader. He had grown a thick, neatly trimmed beard, and his shoulders seemed stronger, more confident. The shoulders of a man who knows his place in the world. His voice was deeper and calmer when he said, "Hi, Mom." I reached out, instinctively opening my arms. "Daniel," I said, feeling the syllables press against my chest. He hugged me tightly with both arms, like someone hugging a person they've missed, not just a son doing it automatically. The first evening passed in a warm glow, with wine and the soft light of our old fireplace casting warm shadows across the living room. He told me about Portland, about long hikes alone, the music he'd gotten into, and how he'd started working with local artists, helping organize events and galleries. I was charmed, proud, but I couldn't ignore the persistent feeling that something had changed. In his observant, quiet gaze, there rested something unspoken. Over the weekend, we fell into a familiar rhythm. He helped me carry boxes of decorations down from the attic. We hung garlands along the banister and set up the tree together, like when he was a child. He still liked the colored lights. I'd always preferred the soft white ones, but I didn't say anything. It was Sunday evening when things began to shift. We were in the kitchen. He was helping me wash the dishes after dinner, something he'd never done before. The sink was full of soapy water, and the radio was playing light Christmas jazz. I turned to hand him a towel, and for a second, our hands touched. His gaze met mine. Our eyes lingered a moment too long, and the air around us seemed to tremble. A pause hung in the air, not awkward but heavy, full of something I couldn't name. "You look different," he said, drying a plate. I laughed nervously. "Well, that's what 10 years and a few gray hairs do to a woman." "No," he replied quietly. "I mean, you look good, strong, like you've come into your own." I felt my cheeks flush with warmth. "That's very sweet of you." He set the plate down and turned fully towards me. "I'm not just saying that. I mean it." The silence stretched. I tried to focus on the remaining dishes, but my hand trembled just enough to feel awkward. He noticed. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded too quickly. "Just tired, that's all." But sleep couldn't cure this tiredness. It felt like being suddenly seen, truly seen, after years of being invisible. That night I lay in bed awake, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts circled. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it, and what I felt hearing it. As if some deep part of me had awakened. A part I had hidden away for so long I'd almost forgotten it existed. The next day felt almost normal. We baked cookies together, an old tradition. From his childhood, he insisted on putting in too many chocolate chips. As always, the house filled with the smell of sugar and butter, and for a while, it was just laughter, music, and warmth. But the way he looked at me hadn't changed. If anything, it had intensified. It was more intentional. Later that day, we sat by the fire with mugs of hot chocolate. Snow was falling outside, painting the windows a soft white. The firelight flickered on his face as he turned to me. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you ever feel like a part of you got lost when you became a parent?" The question landed softly, like a quiet gust of wind. I looked at the steam rising from my mug. "Yes," I said. "I think a lot changed when you were born. I love being your mom more than anything, but yes, a part of me disappeared. I know where some of it went." He nodded slowly, looking into the fire. "I think I understand that now." And when he spoke about how we change for the people we love and how sometimes we forget who we are outside of those roles, my throat tightened. That's very mature. He smiled softly. Well, you did raise me. That evening, we sat a little closer on the couch. It felt natural and familiar, yet carried something unspoken. His hand brushed against mine as we watched an old movie, one of those we used to watch when he was a teenager. I couldn't focus on the screen. All I could feel was the warmth of him beside me, the soft scent of his sweatshirt, and the way my heart began to pound against my ribs, as if it had found a new rhythm. Something was happening. I didn't fully understand it, but I couldn't deny it. And perhaps for the first time in a long time, I didn't want to shut it out. The snow fell harder as the night deepened inside. The fire crackled, and our laughter turned into quiet conversation. And then, in the long silences that didn't need filling, I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew that something inside me had changed, and there was no going back. Morning light filtered softly through the blinds, and I woke with a strange sense of calm. Daniel was already in the kitchen, quietly humming to himself, making breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. The smell brought me back to lazy Sunday mornings, when he was still a boy in pajamas, barefoot and messy-haired, but now he stood upright, composed. His movements were measured. "Sleep well?" he asked, placing a plate in front of me. "Yes," I lied. He sat across from me, his gaze steady as we ate. Conversation flowed easily. Books we'd read, music, movies. But beneath it all lurked something deeper, pulling us both forward. We didn't speak of it, didn't name it, but it was there. Later that afternoon, while putting away decorations in the attic, we both reached for the same box at the same time. Our hands touched again, and this time, neither of us pulled away. His eyes met mine, searching, questioning. I had no answers, only questions. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Alive. And so the holidays continued, not as I had expected, but in a way I couldn't ignore. Something was blooming in the silence between our words. Something real. I knew even then that this Christmas would change everything. The snow continued to fall in soft waves, blanketing the street in the quiet peace that only winter can bring. I stood at the kitchen window, watching it swirl under the old lamppost on the corner. Morning came slowly, thick as honey. The coffee grew cold in my hand. I hadn't even taken a sip. Behind me, the house was silent, except for the occasional hiss of the radiator and the rhythmic thump of Daniel's footsteps upstairs. He'd always walked heavily. Even as a child, I'd told him he'd make a terrible burglar. Now that sound soothed me, as if anchoring something that had felt lost for too long. He came down soon after, wearing the same sweatshirt as last night, his hair slightly tousled. There was something familiar in the way he moved around the kitchen that both warmed and unsettled me. He belonged here, but he felt different now. Not like a boy coming home, but like a man seeing me for the first time. "You didn't sleep much," he said softly, opening the cupboard for a mug. I turned from the window, offering a half smile. "Is it that obvious?" "I know your signs, Mom." He poured me black coffee, no sugar. "Back in school, you'd stay up late until I got home, pretending to be asleep on the couch. But I always heard you tossing and turning when I came in." The memory hit me in the chest, a mix of nostalgia and a strange ache I couldn't name. "I guess some things don't change," I said, brushing a crumb off the counter. He leaned against the sink, sipping his coffee, his eyes never leaving me. "Some things do." The silence hung between us. We went for a walk later that morning. The wind was sharp but not harsh, and the snow crunched under our boots with every step. At first, we barely spoke, just walked through the neighborhood past houses draped in lights and wreaths. Some things looked exactly as they had for years. Some houses had changed, like the people in them. Daniel reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a pair of gloves. Mine. "Saw you left these on the bench," he said, offering them. I took them, feeling the brush of his fingers as he handed them over. Even through the gloves, the touch felt charged. Or maybe I just imagined it. Maybe I wanted to imagine it. At home, we made soup together. I'd always found cooking therapeutic. And doing it beside him, sharing the space, the movements, the quiet gestures, I felt grounded. When I leaned over to stir the pot, he stood behind me, closer than necessary. I felt his hand lightly touch my lower back, steadying me. There was no reason for it. Everything in front of me was still, but I didn't move anyway. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. I've been thinking about something. I didn't turn around. What? This trip. Being here with you? I swallowed, continuing to stir mechanically, but my thoughts snagged. What about it? He paused, and I felt him weighing the moment. I wasn't sure what I was bracing for. Finally, he said, over the years, I wondered who you'd be now, and if you'd still feel like home. I turned to him, and suddenly his eyes were so open, so filled with something deeper than I was ready to name. I asked softly, and? You're more than I remembered, he said. More than I ever allowed myself to see. That evening, everything seemed to shift an inch into the unknown. We ate dinner slowly, not because the food was exquisite, but because the silence between us was full of unspoken things. Our glances lingered longer. Our conversations grew deeper. Later, we sat together on the couch again. The lights from the Christmas tree cast soft tones on the walls. This time, we weren't watching a movie. We were just talking. He told me things he'd never shared before. His doubts about the future, the loneliness that had settled in after his last breakup, how he'd thought 100 times about calling me, but didn't know what to say. I thought I had to be strong before I saw you again, he admitted. Emotionally, I mean, like I had to have it all figured out. And now? I asked. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something vulnerable, raw. Now I realize I don't have to be. Being here with you, it feels like I'm allowed to be weak again. The next morning arrived with a sense of uncertainty, as if even the sun wasn't sure how to rise after such a night. We ate breakfast with quiet caution. He made coffee, I toasted bread. Our hands touched, our eyes met, but we said nothing. We were both thinking. Later, we went outside together. The snow crunched underfoot, the air was sharp and fresh, the world felt clean, as if washed overnight. The street was silent, but inside me, silence was absent. Inside me, something fragile and alive was fluttering. He broke the silence as we passed a neighbor's house. Do you think we're crazy? I smiled weakly. Maybe, but are we wrong? He asked. I thought for a moment. I think sometimes life brings people together in ways we don't expect. And maybe it's not about right or wrong. Maybe it's about what's true. He looked at me, his gaze penetrating. And what's your truth? I met his eyes, my heart pounding. That I've never felt more seen, or more wanted. And it scares me. He stopped walking. You don't need to be scared. I nodded slowly, but he took my hand. And there, in the falling snow, with the world hushed and white around us, I let myself believe him. For the first time in years, I let myself feel. And it was terrifying. And it was beautiful. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that nothing would ever be the same.